Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting. What's up first?
Yeah, there's a ordinance in front of you tonight to extend the end date for the school district to water outside of the current watering schedule. You may recall, what's that?
I don't know that we do have that or an agenda. I think you could probably go ahead and explain it though while we're waiting.
Okay, yeah. Do you guys have tonight's agenda on your screens?
No. What's that? The agenda, yes, but no, we don't see it in front of us. We see what you see up here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Tamara.
Do you have the ability to pull up the packet itself?
Yeah, it looks like 0 of us have the iPad, so I
Oh, okay.
apologize. Oh, sorry. Deanna has it.
Okay. Do any of you get hard copy packets, or do you all rely on your iPads?
I don't.
You don't.
I like it printed.
You normally get a printed packet? Okay. So is it kind of according to city council member preference?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so some of you get printed packets, others rely on your iPad?
I rely on my desktop computer. I don't utilize my iPad hardly ever.
Okay, yeah, we should talk about that some more, maybe at another time. I want to
Yeah,
make sure you guys
I've used it since I've gotten it.
I want to make sure you guys have full access to the entire packet in real time at the council meetings. That's pretty important, so. Mhm. Okay. Anyway, is it okay if I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, so there's an ordinance 3078 in front of you to extend the watering exemption for the school district until the end of this year. Earlier, a couple months ago, you'd extended it till October 1st. They're telling us they need a little more time. What we'll do is eventually, before the next watering season begins, we'll come back with a more permanent policy that will go into effect on what entities should be exempt and when. But in the meantime, we're recommending that you adopt ordinance 3078 to allow the school district a little more time to be exempt until December 31st of this year.
Thank you. Yes. Just because it's easy, it's to the end of the year, I'm assuming. It may be unseasonably warm, I don't know. So the question before us, the possible motion here, we may have a discussion. Mr. Lombardi?
The city won't be responsible for any frozen pipes and so forth, right?
No.
Yeah, just wanted to confirm that.
I was hoping you'd make a motion.
Like, I've been waiting.
Sure. I'll make the motion that we approve Moses Lake School District Playfield Water Exemption Extension Ordinance 3078.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item number 2 of new business is the state legislative agenda, and here to present this evening is our consultant, Brianna Murray. Brianna, are you on? Looks like she's got her hand raised there. I don't know.
Hello.
Good evening.
I could not hear audio prior to, I think, you guys calling on me. Am I up?
You are. Yes.
Hey. Well, Mayor, Council, it is wonderful to see you this evening. Thank you so much for the flexibility to appear before you virtually. This evening, I have a presentation for you that, let me back up. I'm Brianna Murray with Gordon Thomas Honeywell Government Relations, your contract lobbyist. I have a presentation for you this evening that builds on the work that we did this summer, which was a retreat going through how the legislative process works and how to engage in it. This evening, I have a presentation to get us prepared for the 2026 legislative session. If you'll just bear with me one second while I hopefully have the ability to share screen to bring up a PowerPoint that you should also all have in your packets. In addition to the PowerPoint in your materials, you should have a draft legislative agenda that I'm hoping you all will be able to reference as we go through and do the presentation. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay. So this evening, I'm going to provide you with an overview of what to expect.
Now we cannot. I
Now you
apologize.
cannot. Oh, okay. How about that? How about there?
We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, I'll provide you with an overview of what to expect during the 2026 legislative session, review a draft 2026 legislative agenda to get your feedback and discussion on, and then discuss next steps on how to set you all up for success in the 2026 legislative session. The 2026 legislative session will start the second Monday of January, so January 12th of 2026. As a reminder, the legislature operates on a 2-year cycle, and the 2026 session will be the second year of that 2-year cycle. As such, it's scheduled to be a short 60-day session. There's not a significant election cycle between the 2025 and 2026 session, so the political makeup of the legislature will be substantially similar to what we saw last session, which means Democrats will control both chambers. As the second year of the biennium, all bills that were introduced in 2025 that did not pass into law automatically carry over and remain under consideration in 2026. Additionally, new bills can be introduced. And probably the biggest component of the 2026 session is that the legislature goes in and makes adjustments to their biennial budgets. So last session, they adopted budgets that are controlling their budgeting and spending from July 1 of 2025 until June 30th of 2027. During the 2026 session, they go in and make modifications to those budgets to accommodate for adjustments in revenue collections, different programmatic changes. And in the last month, we've learned that the legislature is collecting less revenue than what they anticipated they would be collecting. So this next session, within their mid-biennial adjustments, they're going to be facing some fairly significant deficits. After the short 60-day legislative session, all members of the House of Representatives and half the members of the Senate will be facing re-election. Traditionally, this means that in short legislative sessions, the legislature shies away from controversial issues that would go into effect, become law, while they're simultaneously campaigning for office. So as a general rule of thumb, short legislative sessions tend to have less controversial issues and tend to focus on making adjustments to policies that were enacted during the first year of the biennium. Some of the emerging themes for the upcoming legislative session are addressing the state's ongoing budget challenges, particularly within the operating budget, and responding to federal actions. The governor has released several different announcements over the last couple of months outlining impacts to Washington state programs such as Medicaid, food assistance, and the impact of federal tariffs on the state's overall economy. So there's a lot of discussion amongst legislators on different bills or policy adjustments that they could make in response to those federal actions. Moving into your legislative agenda, my recommendation for you all going into this short legislative session is to keep your legislative agenda as focused as possible. As a general rule of thumb, that means no more than 3 to 5 top priority items. I also recommend that you tailor your legislative agenda to the process, politics, and budget realities that are the 2026 session. So given that it is the second year of the biennium and a short legislative session, it is not an ideal year to put forward a multi-million-dollar request or a large policy bill, unless you're thinking about that request in the terms of a multi-year effort, and you're utilizing the short session as a way of laying the groundwork for success in 2027 or 2028. The third component is that I encourage you to keep your legislative agenda as city-centric as possible. There are a lot of different ways that individuals can choose to weigh in to various policy making, but the impact that the city has on state policy making is best received when you stay focused on the services that you all as city government are delivering, rather than weighing in on education funding or healthcare or items where you're not a direct service provider. One component that we spent a lot of time talking about this summer was your desire to increase the amount of money coming into the community. So as you think about funding requests, my recommendation is that you tailor it toward the budget realities in the 3 budgets. The operating budget, and the state has 3 different budgets: the operating budget, transportation budget, and capital budget. The operating budget is the budget that you hear about most frequently in the news, and it is the one that is facing the most significant deficit going into this next legislative session. The September revenue forecast indicated that there's an approximately $400 million deficit in the 25-27 biennium, and when you take it into account the 4-year outlook, that increases to $900 million. The operating budget tends to fund operating programs and technology. So you would have a request in this budget if you were wanting to get funding for a new program, a new service, where you're going to go out and hire employees or otherwise incur an operating or programmatic expense. My recommendation to you this session is to not bring one of those requests forward this year, given the state of this budget and the fact that it is a mid-biennial budget. Unlike the other 2 budgets, the operating budget has a strict timeline on when you would have to spend dollars. It doesn't carry over from year to year. So any funds appropriated in 2026 for a program would have to be fully spent down by June 30th of 2027, with very little flexibility on that deadline. The second budget is the transportation budget. The transportation budget is one of the more is also facing fiscal challenges. The legislature is in the practice of developing and adopting transportation packages where they raise revenue and then allocate out that revenue over a 12-year period, a 15-year period, or a 16-year period. That practice has the legislature facing a challenge in that many of the projects that they have already committed to funding are coming in at higher project costs, and revenues are coming in lower than they anticipated. So the legislature's focus in the transportation budget is less on funding new projects and more on resolving how best to deliver the projects that they have already committed to. Because the legislature increased the gas tax in 2025, and because there is an election immediately following the 2026 legislative session, it's unlikely that they will look at new taxes for either the operating or the transportation budget unless they're new taxes that they are planning to put on the November ballot for voter approval. So I don't see there being a significant amount of transportation revenue available during the 2026 session. With that being said, there is a lot of dialogue around the development of the next transportation package. And so you'll note in your draft legislative agenda that we are starting to lay the groundwork for some transportation requests if and when that package comes together in future years. The third budget is the capital budget. This is the most stable of the three budgets and presents the greatest opportunity for funding. This is also the same budget that funded the Well 29 and Well 17 projects that you were successful in receiving funding for last session. The capital budget has about $300 million in bond capacity reserved for the supplemental budget, and the average appropriation coming out of the capital budget in supplemental years is in the $250,000 range. The legislature prioritizes projects that are urgent, resulted from unexpected events, and are necessary for vital service delivery when they are evaluating projects in a mid-biennial year. So again, my guidance to you all is to think about your legislative agenda as being focused and tailored to the political environment, including budget realities, and to remain city-centric. And within each of the three budgets, there's different dynamics that we're hoping to feed into in order to be successful this next legislative session. With that in mind, you have a draft legislative agenda in your packet for review and feedback this evening. The legislative agenda that you have in your packet has two different sections in it, and this is our way, or my recommended way of accomplishing the focus that I mentioned in the earlier slide. By separating out your top priority and funding requests from the wide variety of different policy statements that are of interest to, but perhaps not a top priority to the city, you are able to accomplish that focus while still providing direction on the many other issues that impact the city. I've used this two-section or two-document structure for years, and it does an excellent job of balancing this need to be focused with the fact that there are many different issues and policies that impact the city. The second thing I would note about your proposed legislative agenda is that it really reflects a multi-year effort. There is really one item on your draft agenda that is tailored to being funded this session, and the rest are launching a multi-year effort to really look at success in the years to come. And then I'll note that we're meeting today to get your feedback and make modifications with the goal of having the legislative agenda finalized no later than early November, so we can begin outreach well before the beginning of the legislative session. And I'll just note that I appreciate that I'm before you this evening and that this is the timeline that we are on. Since last year, I think we got a final legislative agenda adopted after the legislative session had already begun. So I greatly appreciate your engagement and time this evening in advancing this process forward in a timely manner. So with that, I want to transition your focus into the specific items on the legislative agenda. So you have on a top priority list that includes an urgent sewer line replacement funding request. This is a funding request that I think meets the criteria that I outlined for the capital budget of being an unexpected event that came up outside of anyone's control that is key to delivering a service that the community very much relies on. The request in this case is much larger than the average amount coming out of the average amount that we see appropriated in the supplemental budget. So I mentioned that was 250,000, and yet you see this request here is 2.3 million. And the reason for that is that in conversation with your city manager, I believe that this is a very compelling request, particularly for a supplemental budget, given that the sewer line broke in an unexpected fashion. And that if you are not successful in securing funding at the state level, you all still have the flexibility in order to deliver the project. Similarly, if the legislature says we've got 300,000 but not 2 million, that you are still able to deliver the project with any level of state investment. So that is the first item and the item that is most tailored to the specifics of the 2026 legislative agenda or 2026 dynamics. The next item is a long-term item that we have spent some time talking about, and that is ensuring water availability for the Moses Lake community. This is going to be a multi-year effort, and it's going to be focused not just on engaging the legislature, but also on engaging state agencies and other stakeholders. As you all move forward in selecting your preferred path forward on how best to increase water resources to the community, we'll develop a legislative and state agency engagement strategy that aligns with that direction and advances it forward. So this statement on the draft agenda calls for that work. The next item on the agenda is again laying the groundwork for a multi-year effort really targeted toward the next transportation revenue package and or engaging WashDOT in some non-earmarked dollars. And that is the May Valley I-90 interchange at Hanson Road. As you all know, the interchange is undersized for current and future growth on the west side of Moses Lake and is currently load limited. I think what I found most compelling about this request was the impact that it has on the city's ability to deploy fire trucks and needing to send them empty rather than fully loaded with water in order to meet those load restrictions. So this calls on us to work with the legislature to identify funding, either legislatively or through agency direction, in order to improve this interchange. Another transportation project that, again, similarly teeing up for a multi-year effort is establishing a new Moses Lake crossing. My understanding is that in 2026, you all will be determining the location of a crossing, and our efforts through advocacy would be to look for the state to contribute to the construction of that crossing at whatever location you all select. And then the next item is also a transportation priority. It is looking at making safety and channelization improvements to Broadway Avenue or State Route 171. I envision this item to not just be legislative, but also engaging state agencies like the Transportation Improvement Board and the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board to position the city to receive funding from some of those key grant programs. And the final item is to request WashDOT's engagement and or legislative direction on pursuing a Welcome to Moses Lake sign on the pedestrian crossing over I-90 on the west side of Moses Lake as drivers enter into the Moses Lake community from the west. Rather than calling this document a legislative agenda, we've titled it a state advocacy agenda, which I think more accurately reflects the work that's needed to move these items forward. To move these items forward, we will absolutely need to and plan to engage legislators, but it also calls on engagement of state agencies, the governor's office, and other extensions of the executive branch.
Hey,
So these
Brianna,
would be, yes. Yes.
I have a question. So earlier you mentioned the possibility of the state coming up with a transportation package in the coming years. Would these ones be good fits for that? The May Valley I-90 interchange, Moses Lake Crossing, Broadway. Could those, any or all of those be possibly included in a future transportation package?
I think it's certainly possible, but not a guarantee. One of the things that the legislature is recognizing is that the process that they have used to develop transportation packages of increasing revenues while simultaneously picking projects that would be built 10, 15 years into the future is not working. And so we've heard some transportation budget writers indicate that they want to get away from this practice of fully planning out all of the projects that would be funded with any given package, and to come up with some other mechanism for them to select projects on more of a more similarly to how the capital budget is structured, where every biennium you see an investment in new projects that are shovel ready and ready to go. So because we don't have details on how the package is going to be structured, it's hard to guarantee that yes, we're positioning ourselves for inclusion in a package in the traditional sense that it's been developed. But I think what we are doing by beginning to talk about and socialize these projects is we're positioning ourselves for funding if and when it is available in whatever structure or context it becomes available. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So a quick question for these priorities. Do you believe when legislators look at these that they understand that those are prioritized, like the top one would be number one, or are they just a group?
That's a great question. The reason the top one is number one is because it's the only one that is an active request for this session. And I think legislators will understand that that is why it is at the top of the list, because it requires their action this session in order to move it forward. I think most legislators will look at this list and think it is very ambitious. And I'd anticipate legislators would try to temper expectations around the number of items that can be accomplished on this list within a short period of time. So I think a key part of presenting this agenda to lawmakers for it to be successful is indicating which items really are long-term multi-year items, and beginning to use the time with them to educate them on some of these long-term objectives rather than make a specific ask or action of them in the moment. So I don't know if I fully answered your question there. I mean, I think if there's an interest in changing the order of which things are on the page, I'd really encourage you to still maintain the item that requires their immediate action at the top of the list. And then if you want to make adjustments to the list otherwise for appearance sake, I think you certainly could.
Okay.
In addition to the top priority items, you have a second section that is a series of policy statements of different bills and funding that you would support or express concerns about. based on different feedback that you've received from stakeholders or other community interests. So the first one is related to sustainable energy, and this really calls on you to work with your community partners to ensure that there's adequate energy to support the Moses Lake region moving forward. And much of this language was developed and can continue to be refined in coordination with those community partners. And City Manager, do you want to make any comments about this language?
Yeah, thanks, Brianna. So I asked several of our partners to weigh in on our entire state legislative agenda. So I got good comments back from the Grant County EDC and also the Port of Moses Lake. I also got some minor comments from the CEO of the Public Utilities District, John Mertlick, and on Friday he had just a few minor edits that didn't make it into the packet. I can read them and I can forward them to you as well, but in the actual language where it says the City of Moses Lake supports efforts to ensure that the region has sustainable power to support growing industries, Grant County PUD's, and then this is where he makes a change here. Grant County's PUD's power portfolio is largely reliant on the Priest Rapids project, which is the Wanapum and Priest Rapids dams, to provide energy for the region. The region's retail load growth is nearing the maximum capacity energy output of the dams. So those were the only sentences that he edited. The rest of it, he said, was fine. So he just wanted to make sure that my power energy speak was correct. So.
Okay, the next item on the policy statements is also from a community partner, and that is expressing support for Associate Development Organization funding, or ADOs. ADOs serve as essentially the state's economic development departments, regional economic development departments throughout the state. And you all have a local ADO who engages in business recruitment, retention, and expansion. These programs are often funded through a credit against the state sales tax, as well as an increase in funding that's distributed through the operating budget. In recent years, they've seen a reduction and adjustment in their funding, and given the state's operating budget, it's anticipated that their funding streams will be significantly debated this next session. So this calls on the city to support ADOs and support the funding streams that they receive from the state. The next item is on sustainable aviation fuel incentives and is very much a statement in support of 12 and the modifications that they may be requesting this next session to ensure that they can take advantage of the state's sustainable aviation fuel tax credit. I've been in conversation with 12's lobbyist, Dave Warren, and this direction in this draft essentially calls on me to continue engaging with him to help advance forward their proposed legislation. The next item is a statement in support of industrial land development and any policy changes or adjustments to regulations that would assist in the development of industrial lands. I'll just note that this was an item that you all had on your legislative agenda last session, and we just envision continuing to carry over and engage on this topic in the 2026 session. The next item is on PFAS contamination, which I know you are all familiar with. This is simply a statement that asks for statewide investments in communities to test for and remove PFAS contamination. We've seen the state make investments in PFAS testing and removal of contamination at various levels over the years. This calls on them to increase that funding, particularly or not make cuts to the funding, particularly given their budget situation. And the last two items are on fiscal sustainability and unfunded mandates and local control. These are standard requests that most cities bring forward as part of their legislative agenda, calling on the state to not pass it down new obligations without providing funding and to honor the local decision-making authority that you all currently have. Those last two items are a good
Brianna,
Yeah.
sorry, real quickly on the PFAS. I understand what you were saying, that we're in support of state assistance for testing and remediation. However, I believe the state recognizes, I think, 5 different contaminants. And the federal government is looking at the regulation of 3 of the 5 that the state regulates. And I believe they're looking at repealing the testing and remediation requirements for those particular chemicals. Is there anything that could be added to the statement, or I don't know if you could look into that to see if there's anything at the state level to where anybody's asking to have those removed from the monitoring and remediation requirements? So I think it would just be the PFAS and PFOA is the only 2 that would remain that we'd have to monitor and get out of the water.
Great. I was not aware of that, but I will research it and certainly we can make modification to the language in the draft. Thank you.
Is the general sense that we're encouraging the state to follow the federal government's lead and not
Correct.
be more restrictive than the federal government?
Yes, exactly. That's, yeah, thank you for stating that far more concisely than I did. Yes.
Great. Okay, I've got that noted. The last 2 items on your policy statements are a good segue into the Association of Washington Cities. Following up on our discussion this summer, I wanted to just note that our plan and intention in engagement with the Association of Washington Cities is to really let them lead on the dozens of different issues that have an impact on all cities, and to focus our time, energy, and advocacy engagement on items where there's a unique nexus to the Moses Lake community or unique impact to the Moses Lake community. If AWC were to ask for assistance on a particular issue, we would certainly respond and engage. But our hope here is to keep our advocacy focused on the items on the ledge agenda and those items on AWC's agenda where there's a direct nexus. So for awareness, I wanted to share with you what has emerged as AWC's top 4 priorities for this upcoming legislative session. The first one is to increase indigent defense or public defense funding. My understanding is there's not an impact on that topic to Moses Lake, so we would not do much engagement on that item. The second item is to improve housing construction or increase housing supply. We are anticipating a fairly robust debate this upcoming session around the permit timelines or the timelines in which cities issue permits for housing, and that's likely to be a focus of that statewide conversation. The third is looking at sustainable funding options for local transportation, street maintenance, and preservation. And the fourth one is advocating for preserving state shared revenues and state programs that cities benefit from. This is a note or a call to the nature of the operating budget that is facing a significant budget this next session, and a note that cities directly receive revenue from 4 or 5 different accounts in that budget. And in other times when the legislature has struggled to balance that operating budget, they have chosen to reduce the revenues in those 4 or 5 counts, which has then created shortfalls and deficits in city budgets following the end of the legislative session. So that's really what that's a nod to. The rest of the time with me this evening is really for you all to provide feedback that you may have on the top priorities, the policy statements, and the proposed engagement with the Association of Washington Cities. Welcome your thoughts on not just the actual topics, but also structure. I think I've attempted to explain to you the rationale and reasoning behind these requests and why they make sense in this political environment, but also welcome your thoughts and feedback on whether you think it makes sense. So with that, Mayor, I will turn it over to you to facilitate discussion.
Sure. Councilmember Lombardi.
Yes, thank you, Brianna. So you picked the one that I was thinking about before we came here today, which is the sewer line replacement. So my question to you is, oftentimes these projects are broken up into segments. So can we submit a segment of that? Let's say that's 250 or 300,000, and not the entire project.
You certainly could. My understanding of the project, though, is that if you put forward a request for 2.3 million and the feedback from our legislators is there's no way we'll be able to help you with that amount, how about, and they, fill in any dollar amount you want, whether it's 750,000, 250,000, that our response to that would be yes, because you all are planning to commit local dollars to make up the balance. So, so my recommendation would be to keep the request at the 2.3 million, but remain flexible throughout the legislative session and leading up to the legislative session to actually either submit or modify the request to a smaller amount.
So even though it's 10 times what the average payout is, that, they may look at that and say, we're not even going to look at this.
Yeah,
As opposed to putting it in a realistic range, let's say.
Yeah, I'd say if I were not on the ground to facilitate and have that dialogue, I'd absolutely be making the recommendation that put in a request for 250,000 or something less and increase your odds. But I think the benefit of me being there on the ground to be able to say, hey, have you had that conversation about that? Or do you want to submit it at 2.3 million or a much smaller amount? Allows us to be a bit more nimble and take advantage of whatever that iterative conversation looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, Victor, that, based on the short session and all of that, and because this is really an emergency and on account of what already occurred, that this is a compelling enough story. And am I to understand correctly, Rob, that this project is more or less shovel ready, or as compared to other projects that the planning and design would be minimal? Is that?
Yeah, design's underway now, and I understand that engineering is doing the in-house design and is quite a ways along on that. We have to work with ecology on some shoreline issues, but yeah, we believe that we can get this project built in 2026. Brianna mentioned that, yes, we have the cash to do it all ourselves without the state's help. And yes, that's a true statement. But what we have to look at is the cost as far as what else is not getting done. So for example, we were going to do the Wheeler lift station, which is an old 1980s lift station, next. And that needs to be done.
We also have other work at the central operations facility that's significant.
Yep.
Yeah.
But because this line broke and we have to get this line fixed, we can't do Wheeler lift station. So there is a cost in other projects not getting completed. And so the more money we can get from the state for this project, the greater chance we'll be able to have of getting much needed projects like the Wheeler lift station completed sooner.
Yes, we could always threaten that there will be a pool of sewage on Wheeler Road.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify too. I wasn't suggesting to go with the approach that I mentioned. I just wanted to bracket the high end and low end, and then that way we get to evaluate which is the more likely choice to go, and that's why you defer to your advisor on that. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't limiting.
Yeah, I think it's a risk always. But Councilmember Martinez.
Yeah, um,
Uh,
Mayor, Just-
Sorry,
just-
Brianna. Go ahead.
yes, just real quick, I want to so you all were very successful in securing 2 different capital appropriations during the first year of the 2-year biennium. And the legislature does tend to not award funds to jurisdictions who receive funds in the first year, the biennium in the second year. It's sort of like you already got your piece of the pie. But I do think this is a compelling project, and comfortable with the recommendation of moving it forward at this high amount because it is so compelling. But at the end of the day, we could come back with $0, and that's always a possibility. But if you don't ask, then you don't get. So I want to just set expectations that just because this is on a list, it doesn't guarantee that we would get 250,000 even. There's a very real likelihood that we could get $0, and that would not be unreasonable given the investments that the legislature made last session. But I do think if you don't ask, you don't get, and so we should put it forward, and I think it's compelling.
Okay, I think Councilmember Martinez had something.
Pretty much what you said, Brianna. I don't know, you always negotiate for more, right? Or ask for more and negotiate. I think considering the project, and all of the organizations in Moses Lake that would be supportive of getting this fixed would be, just another layer or addition of support to try and compel the legislation to, or legislators to award us some money. So I don't want to undercut us right from the beginning by asking for less.
Sure. I mean, there's some component of this, however, where if the project is roughly 2 million, we would have some buy-in if we were to say, well, we'll put up half.
Right.
So that's also a very positive bargaining
Mhm.
tool, right?
Right.
And so I think in that regard, Councilmember Lombardi's question is pretty valid. And because of the restrictions otherwise, the revenues are down. And they have other costs. So I think we should probably get some consensus as to what direction we'd like to go with this request.
Considering the project and Brianna's experience, what she sees on a daily basis once the session is in and even off when the session's not in, when it's not in session, I would support the higher dollar amount request.
I would defer to our advisor. That's where I was starting from the beginning. So I just wanted to make sure, like I said, that we bracketed it as far as evaluating the low end and the high end. So, Brianna, you're saying once it's submitted, we're able to adjust it as well? Is that what I heard you say?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've certainly been in that situation for other clients over the years. And you submit it, there's conversations with capital budget chairs and ranking members. There's maybe a better realization of what amount of funding is available in the different buckets. And then, a request comes back of like, well, we can't do the full amount, but we can do half, or we can do a third, and sometimes that conversation happens right out of the gate. It's hard to predict. So I think it makes sense for you all to state what the overall need is, and we make modifications from there. And the expectation for you all would be, any money going to the project in this tough budget year would be a success. I'd encourage you not to evaluate it based on, oh, we asked for 2.3 million and we only got 1 million, or we only got 400,000, whatever it is. I just encourage you to go into the legislative session with the idea that any dollar amount being allocated to the project is a success.
Okay. So looks like there's some reference to shoot the moon, so to speak.
Yeah, I think listen to who's got the boots on the ground.
Okay. Yeah, and as I'm understanding it, maybe Brianna, you feel compelled to take this on. Is that? You
I
like the
thought it was
story?
pretty, I thought it was pretty compelling. The other thing that that I've talked with the city manager about is the Public Works Assistance Account does have a revolving grant for emergencies like this that emerge. And I want to make sure we're taking advantage of that grant program first and foremost. And that may then also impact the dollar amount that we would ask for the legislature. And what happens with that grant program, whether we are or aren't eligible for whatever reason, would help shape some of our messaging on how we move the request forward. So yeah, I think this is compelling. And when we talk about urgent, unexpected events, it's these exact type of projects that come to mind.
Yeah, and I think it is worth mentioning in the messaging that there's an economic component to this, as tourism suffers greatly when we have this type of contamination in our water.
I'm making a note of that.
The lake.
Yeah, yes, the lake water, yes. For recreational purposes, got it. What other feedback do you all have?
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned, just maybe reading between the lines too much, but back to the draft legislative agenda itself. So we have six items on there. Is it more beneficial to have fewer, or you think 6 is okay?
My rule of thumb is 3 to 5. I
Yeah.
have given that guidance since the very first year that I worked with Rob Carlinzy 20 years ago. And he has always pushed pushed to fudge that a little bit and so I will defer to him on whether he thinks that's worked out for him as we've worked together in various communities.
Oh, I believe you're speaking with his bosses at the moment, so we'll see how this goes. Yeah, I would like to reduce the number myself. I don't know what other thoughts are. Deanna has got her hand up here. Deanna?
Yeah, thank you. You're referring to the top priorities, right? One of the first one being the urgent sewer line.
Yes, ma'am.
So man, God. Thanks for the respect, but maybe, I don't know. Anyway, when you really break it down, those 3 transportation priorities are multi-year, as Brianna said. So to me, there's 3 there and another 3 that clearly aren't going to be awarded or even completely talked about this year. So.
Okay, can you maybe rephrase that into a recommendation for a change to this specific?
Oh, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, which, I mean,
I'm
if you
sorry.
were gonna get rid of or add, what would you do there?
I would keep them all.
Keep all of them? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the welcome to Moses Lake signage, isn't that something the city should do? If there's any chance to, if in the nexus, as Brianna likes to say, I'm learning all sorts of new words from you. Is it just permission? And should that be a top priority, or is
Yeah,
it?
I think we'll have Rob weigh in on that.
Yeah, I was trying to pack in the main things that came out of the retreat last June. And as Brianna mentioned, this is more of a legislative or a state advocacy agenda than a state legislature agenda.
Yeah.
So a lot of these issues we're going to be working with the agencies more on than we're actually going to be working with the legislature on. For example, the Welcome to Moses Lake signage. That's something that we'll be first talking to WSDOT about. And Brianna, the word I think you used was socializing the issue. Is that what you said?
Yeah. I think a lot of this is making legislators and others at staff level aware that this is something you want, and There may be for some of these also as we get into it, like, nope, not possible. Like I know that WashDOT has to enforce the Model Uniform Traffic Device Control Code, MUTCD, and they have to indicate whether or not the signage would be consistent with that. And we may learn that there's no flexibility there, no possibility for signage, and then this falls off the list. This is calling on us to do that agency work and socialize the issues.
And so we could take these off and just talk to the state agencies about them. But there's also value in making sure our legislators know about them too, so that the next time they go and talk to somebody at WashDOT, they might ask about one of these things. Oh, how's Broadway going? Or how's the Moses Lake sign going on the pedestrian facility? And so when the state agencies know that their legislators know, that counts for something. So, but that said, if you, I also like, if I possibly can, I like keeping it to one page as well. And this is spilling onto a second page. So if we had to sacrifice something, it would definitely be the Welcome to Moses Lake signage, because we're not asking for money and we can start talking to the state agencies about it anyway, regardless if it makes it on this agenda. But if you wanted to try to get it closer to one page, that's the one item I would recommend taking off.
Yeah, I think just the language, sorry to follow up after the answers, comments. I think the language, it's a draft legislative agenda. That's why I'm like, why are we asking? Because I'm thinking money. Why are we asking for money for signage? But it's something different. That's why I think it's confusing to see it here, because my thought process is a legislative agenda conversation with Brianna, we're looking for money.
Judy, did you have a comment on this topic?
Do. I would like to see the May Valley and I-90 interchange moved up because of the safety issues for traffic going across, for if there's fire, over the lagoon area, we have to go empty and then fill up after we get there. So that's time spent while a home is burning or whatever. I think that that's really an important issue. Of course, I'm always mostly crossing, but if we had to choose three, I would do the sewer. May Valley would be second for me, and then water, and then down from there. But I think May Valley, WashDOT needs to be really involved in this conversation because of the safety issues that pertain to this. And so to me, it ranks right up there with the sewer replacement line because of this, of the safety part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. I'll get to you, Don, just a second. Vic, did you have something real quickly?
I had a question for Rob. I just want to make sure I understand when you said the legislators that we would like them to know our legislative agenda. Which specific legislators are you talking about?
Mainly our three.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Question. Okay, Councilmember Myers.
On just the Welcome to Moses Lake signage, I think that also helps open the door for other items because we have a few different state facilities that run through Moses Lake. And if we want to make any changes, if we want to put signage or anything like that, it opens that door for discussion on the partnership, because we're not really asking for money, we're asking for permission. It's something that we could probably take on, but if there's anything else, like a statue in the roundabout at Yanazawa that could tie into it. I mean, it's, hey, you let us do this, would you let us do that? Things, we develop that rapport with them, and it becomes easier to work with them.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Any other thoughts on this? On the top priorities specifically? I would echo what Judy has to say. I mean, I think we should prioritize these, or the the sewer main replacement to me makes a lot of sense, just based on the emergency nature of it. So having that as our headline requests, I agree with. The May Valley interchange, just because of the amount of time it's going to take, the sooner we engage in that conversation, the better, I believe. Our water availability, I think we've been beating that drum. That story is out there. Not to say it should just disappear. The Moses Lake crossing, I don't know if we're ready for prime time on that. That may just overburden everything, in my opinion. I would remove it. Broadway Avenue, same thing there. It would be of second consideration to me. The Welcome to Moses Lake signage, I think, just from socializing it, I think that's great. It shows that we're still positive here. It's not just crisis after crisis, right? We're doing something that's a little bit fun and brings some character to the town. So those are my thoughts on this. And it sounds like Judy, I think, wants some prioritization of these issues. Obviously, some of these are going to be direct funding requests, other is cooperation. Mr. Skog.
I agree with that list of priorities. And probably Lake Crossing is literally a bridge too far. One thing that I'd like to talk about though is the water availability, and where you talked about the Welcome to Moses Lake signage permission. I think that it should be pointed out, or at least develop the process of just getting permission for water that may not legislatively cost them money, but is more of a granting of our ability to go after like Bureau Water or other sources. And I think the water availability could be a big a plus without costing the legislative money. So I think we just want permission.
That's a good point. Thank you, Dave. Did you have something else? Mr. Fancher.
That was kind of, I hate to say it, Skog, that was kind of the path I was going to go down. You're a smart man. So I think the urgent sewer line to me is definitely number one, and I think there's a story after story after story why. From Fish and Wildlife, they don't want us spilling sewage in the lake either, and I think there's ecology and just the general health of the people and everything. I mean, you just go on and on and on. The water availability, May Valley I-90 interchange, I would almost put them equal. And the reason is maybe the May Valley I-90 interchange isn't a problem if we don't have any water. Well, I mean, let's think about it. So where's without the water, do we have the population problem? So I just say they're both equally important. We have definitely laid the groundwork for water availability, but I was going to say the same thing. It doesn't have to be monetarily, it has to be policy and decision making as far as on the water availability. If we could trade, deep water rights for shallow water rights, that would be a home run. And that isn't a financial decision as much as it is a policy decision and that ability. So both of those, I think the Moses Lake crossing, if you're ever going to do it, you got to start the conversation. I don't think it's high priority, but if we don't have it in front of us, we're going to push it to 27 to 28 to 29 to 30. And then Broadway, the signage, I would agree. I'm kind of like Rob. If you could shrink the font and get it to one page, a lot of these are starting the process. And I think what I would say, I appreciate your work, Brianna, and I'm so happy we're engaged with a lobbyist, because when we did this in the past, and many, many years in the past, I don't think it had effect when you did a legislative agenda. So, but if I had to say, take one off, I'd probably do the Broadway Avenue one. I mean, there's a plan for that at some point. They just keep pushing it out, and I agree, we still need to start the dialogue, but That's where I'm at on it.
Thank you, Mark. Any other thoughts before we close this out?
Just a thought. So nothing prevents us as staff from having lots of conversations with our counterparts at WashDOT on any of these issues. We meet with WashDOT quarterly. And so even if it doesn't make it on your legislative agenda, we can still be bringing up the issue, laying the groundwork. In fact, we're going to be meeting with WashDOT later this week, and we will be talking about Broadway, whether it makes it on this list tonight or not. We will be talking about Moses Lake signage and the other things. So if you really want it to be focused, you could tell us, hey, continue to work these issues with WashDOT at the staff level. And that way you could trim off a few things to get it down to be really focused and down to one page. So like, yeah, for example, you could take off Broadway and the Welcome to Moses Lake signage, and we as staff will still be working it and talking about it with WashDOT.
Councilmember Lombardi.
I was going to suggest, Rob, that if the legislative agenda, as far as the legislators go, if the concern is to get it to our main three, what we've never done in the city, I don't believe, is to have a specific meeting, maybe twice a year, with the three saying, we want to go over our legislative agendas, right? And then that way we've got them just in a room, just all three, and just go over each one again and stress and stress and stress. I think that has more of an effect than anything. That's better than actually when you go to Olympia during session and you get 15 minutes. So just a suggestion.
Thank you, Victor. Councilmember Myers.
I was just gonna say, I like your idea, staff taking on and seeing if they can get that discussion rolling. But if for some reason we come up with pushback and they don't want to work with us, then I still think we need to have some, I guess, indicators to our legislators that DOT doesn't want to work with us on anything. So if you feel confident you can get that ball rolling, then we can remove it. But if it's not, then keep it on.
So and one example that came up was at the retreat, you guys also talked about a statue in the Yanazawa roundabout. I purposely didn't put that on this list because we hadn't even given WashDOT the chance to say no. Right. So we wanted to kind of see if we can get it done with them first before going to mommy and daddy.
Councilmember Martinez.
We did attempt to have the legislators here. We had 2 out of 3 that were confirmed. And then unfortunately, Judy Warnick's son-in-law was killed. So have we discussed rescheduling that meeting? Or did we just kind of drop it for now?
Yana, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so my recommendation is we absolutely engage our legislators in a pre-session briefing on the legislative agenda. I think depending on schedules, there's a few different formats that can take. We could certainly invite them to come to council chambers where they receive a very formal presentation on the legislative priorities. Could also have more one-on-one conversation with each of them with a small subset of council. We have to navigate, hitting quorum thresholds and noticing public meetings and all of that, weigh into that decision. But one of the reasons that I'm excited you all are finalizing your legislative agenda prior to early November is because we do have 2 months before they're in the legislative session to have those meetings and to do that engagement. And I do think that that early engagement before session starts is really important to success, especially in a short session.
Can I talk about something that I'm used to doing? Is in the fall, we have one-on-ones where it's me, the mayor, and Brianna and her team meet with them, with each legislator one at a time in the fall. And then right before session starts, we have what we call a legislative send-off event. And it's usually that week before session starts. So like right after the 1st of January. And it's just kind of a rah, feel-good session. We invite the community. The mayor kicks it off and talks about what's on our legislative agenda. Then we have the legislators all get up and talk about what's important to them and what they want to get done in the legislature that session. And then we adjourn the meeting and have cookies and socialize. And it's just a way of sending them off with a cheer and a go get them. So that's what I'm used to doing. It's I did it in both Gig Harbor and Kenmore.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's next?
So, Mayor, can I ask for some clarification on direction?
Yes.
So I heard a lot of discussion around making adjustments to the top priorities. I want to just repeat back what I've heard to make sure that it's consistent. So the next draft that comes before you is what you're looking for. I heard in moving the May Valley I-90 interchange at Hanson Road up 1. So it would be number 2 on the list. And then I heard a lot of discussion around shortening the list. Is there a direction to shorten the list and remove the signage item and otherwise direct city staff to work with WashDOT, their WashDOT counterparts on it?
Councilmember Fancher, go ahead.
That's what I was thinking. I would like, well, and I would, if we're doing the signage, we can take Broadway off, just make it 4.
Yeah, that would be my thought as well.
Okay,
So the last 2, those would be moved to discussion items between staff and DOT for now.
And I do recommend keeping the crossing on because we've got to start those conversations sooner rather than later. It could be 10 or 20 years before that bridge even gets built, and we've got to start the conversations early.
Okay, and just to confirm, I did not hear any changes other than looking into the PFAS language on the policy statements. No changes there.
Councilmember Myers?
The only thing that kind of come up during the priorities is the water issue. It kind of touches on policy a little bit. If that can be approached on what is it, Department of Ecology in their stance on trading water rights from deep to shallow. I know they're in discussion, but if we can push that along a little quicker.
Yeah, this language was drafted to be intentionally vague to allow our advocacy to adjust to whatever broader direction you all end up providing on the path forward for water rights. I think before this draft comes before you again, maybe we can make it a bit more specific.
And can I?
Yes, sir.
So I wouldn't be that specific yet because the way ecology has managed that aquifer and given away temporary rights, I would first argue that we shouldn't even have to make a trade. That they should give us shallow rights and build wells for us. So will we fall back to a trade? Probably, but for now, I don't want that to be our first position.
Maybe one thing that I'm hoping that we can accomplish this next legislative session when it comes to water availability is that we really develop a succinct one pager that outlines the problem statement, but also the options for paths forward, and that we share that not just with our local legislators, but some of the legislators that are key to water policy making, and that we get that story out there, particularly amongst some of the Democrat legislators who may not understand why a community with a lake in it has a water availability challenge.
Councilmember Scog.
I think what Rob just said is really important to that discussion, that we had water rights, we had plenty of water, and then because the canal wasn't done, they gave away junior water rights that have taken up so much of the available water that we're now short. So I think to Rob's point, they've given away our water. And I think that needs to be really apparent, really exposed, that rather than, they owe us water, not just to ask, but give us back what you gave away.
Specifically based on the language that those were temporary.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing some direction to do some wording refinement on the water availability language.
Not-
And then, is
Yeah,
that correct?
Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of options as far as solutions for this. So, I mean, I guess we would look to your guidance to be as specific as we need to be, but not to pigeonhole ourselves.
Your Honor, can I? So you have the water strategy paper that you guys talked about on September 16th. That's going to come back to you in a couple of weeks for your approval. It's a complicated issue, and I don't know that we can capture it all in one paragraph here. And I think we're going to need to use that water strategy paper as the main guide in our discussions with WashDOT and the state. So I recommend that we keep the language like it is and rely heavily on the water strategy paper.
A lot of head nods here. Okay.
Okay, so to recap, moving the May Valley I-90 interchange up to number 2, removing the Broadway Avenue and Welcome to Moses Lake signage, and directing city staff to discuss those items with WashDOT rather than having it on the agenda, and making a modification to the PFAS language in the policy statements.
Sounds right. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the feedback and direction. And I look forward to gearing up for the 2026 session. If you have any thoughts on the format of engagement with our legislators leading up to session, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and share those.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Brianna.
Yep, thank you. Take care.
You too. All right, moving on to item number 3, which is the 2026 budget presentation, and I'll turn it over to City Manager Rob Carlinzi.
All right, Your Honor, we're going to hand out the proposed 2026 budget. So here we go. All right, Your Honor, if I could kick this off. Okay, thank you. So we just hand delivered you hard copies of the proposed 2026 annual budget. And we're going to do two things tonight. I'm going to read the budget message, which is at the beginning of your budget. And earlier today, I read it and timed myself, and it was 16 minutes. So, but it's all good stuff, and I promise to be entertaining as much as I can. After I read the budget message, then we'll turn the time over to Madeline to give a kind of a high level overview of what's in the budget. And then after that, we recommend that you all go home and just dive into the budget and read it over the next few days. And then we'll start a series of budget workshops starting next Tuesday night. So, and you have the calendar for those budget workshops, and if we get it all done according to the proposed schedule, then you'll have it adopted in time for Thanksgiving. But by state law, you have until December 31st. So if you need more time, you can always take more time. So, all right. So if you could turn your budget, turn to your to page 4 in your budgets, you'll see the budget message. So get comfy. Again, just 16 minutes of enduring this. Dear Moses Lake City Council, it is a privilege to present to you the 2026 annual budget for the City of Moses Lake. This budget provides $127,443,942 of financial resources to accomplish a wide breadth of city services for the residents and businesses of Moses Lake. These services include our municipal utilities, including water, wastewater, stormwater, sanitation, and ambulance, which includes paramedics and emergency transports. In addition, the budget provides funding for core city's functions, including police, fire, streets, land use planning, and permitting for land development, as well as basic and enhanced city functions such as municipal airport, parks, recreation, cultural, and tourism programs. Moses Lake is an incredible city with a rich history, a gorgeous natural setting on the lake, and an industrious and innovative business community, and a diverse population of engaged residents who care about their community. And Moses Lake's future is brighter than ever and still has so much potential. With its strong underlying assets and a community of resourceful and caring citizens, Moses Lake is on an upward trajectory of becoming an even stronger city that cultivates growth and creativity and that helps people achieve their dreams and goals. A city where its residents and businesses can live and flourish for generations to come. This 2026 annual budget is structured to further propel Moses Lake's upward trajectory. Not only does this budget continue to fund core and basic municipal services, but it also allocates resources to advance the City Council's top priorities for 2026. The City Council adopted these priorities for 2026 in July of 2025 and are as follows. And so what you have here are your adopted priorities with the preamble at the beginning talking about how our top priority will be always to be fulfilling its core mission. And then as you go to the next page, you see all of your top 7 priorities listed out. I won't read all the bullets, but I'll go through each of the 7. So number 1, achieve financial sustainability. Number 2, secure sustainable and reliable water sources for the long term. Number 3, improve the city's image and reputation. Number 4, choose and implement a fire department service delivery model and a plan for obtaining funding for a 3rd fire station in the north end of the city. Number 5, plan for and obtain funding for a new police station. Number 6, identify a 2nd lake crossing location. And number 7, make progress toward washed-out highway projects in Moses Lake. As you can see, the above list of the City Council's priorities is both ambitious and forward-thinking. The City Council aims to set the city on a solid financial foundation while building the underlying infrastructure and scaffolding to help the Moses Lake community grow and thrive. Of the City Council's 7 priorities for 2026, allow me to expand on the top 3 in this budget letter. Financial Sustainability Plan. In early 2026, we will take the next step on our journey toward long-term financial sustainability by conducting a public process to develop a financial sustainability plan. Financial sustainability in this case means that the city's general fund and street fund reserves remain steady by keeping expenses in line with revenues for at least 6 years. We will utilize a consultant to update our forecast model to project revenues and expenditures and create options for financial sustainability. We will also engage the public through an online interactive method, public meetings, and other communication channels. Over the decades, Moses Lake has expanded and added new city services to keep pace with the needs and wants of residents and to stay in compliance with ever-increasing state and federal mandates. The good news is that with these growing wants and needs, Moses Lake has grown a strong tax base to keep up with these wants and needs. For example, Moses Lake's sales tax revenue of $11 million per year is among the highest per capita in the state. The bad news, though, is the cost of providing these services, especially in the general fund, has finally caught up with and surpassed our revenues. The city's adopted budget for 2025 projects a deficit of approximately $3.5 million, not including the $500,000 transfer to a newly created rainy day fund. Earlier this year, we produced a 6-year financial forecast that showed, under current spending levels, the combined ending fund balance of the general and street funds rapidly declining and falling below the City Council's reserve goal of 15% of annual expenditures as soon as 2026 and in the negative in 2028. The no recession status quo forecast scenario that was presented last June is shown here, and you can see that table or that graph on page 7. So that's what the graph looked like last June. But thanks to belt tightening and budget cuts that are now included in this proposed 2026 budget, our general and street fund balances for 2026 will not reflect the above graph. In fact, they're going to be above, we're going to have an ending fund balance that will be above your reserve goal, at least for 2026. That said, so even though we're going to maintain decent fund balances and above your reserve goal, we are still in a deficit situation and have more work to do. The combined general and street funds budget for 2026 is projected to spend $41,861,372, which is a little over $1 million more than we'll be receiving in revenues. While this deficit is substantially less than the 2025 deficit of $3.5 million, it is still a deficit. The City Council has directed us to achieve financial sustainability, and to that end, we will launch a financial sustainability plan initiative in early 2026, which will take a closer and more fundamental look at the budget, including an examination of core, basic, and enhanced services and programs, and how and whether they are delivered by the city. We will also consider the revenue side of the equation, including hiring a consultant to analyze our fees and whether we are achieving cost recovery on permits and other programs. The Financial Sustainability Plan initiative will enlist both the community and city departments to address the underlying and structural causes of our deficit and create a financial forecast that gets expenditures back in line with revenues for at least 6 years. So that's financial sustainability. Council priority number 2, which is sustainable long-term water sources. The City Council has put a high priority on acquiring water sources that will sustain Moses Lake's growth for the long term. The city has senior first-in-line rights to a large, deep basalt aquifer, which provides about 90% of the city's water. This ancient aquifer has been charged or accumulated over many thousands of years. With the state granting temporary rights to this aquifer to agriculture decades ago, the basalt aquifer is declining and not replenishing. As a result, the City Council has made it a top priority to find new sources of water, including more sustainable and replenishable shallow aquifers and surface water from the Columbia River. Under the City Council's direction, we have produced a water sources strategy paper that outlines a plan to obtain new sources that will serve the city for many generations and decades to come. The 2026 budget includes resources to do so, including regional, state, and federal lobbying and coordination. And the third City Council priority, community engagement. We are looking forward to launching a community engagement initiative to learn from the ideas and expertise of our residents and businesses. This effort will include a community conversation about who we are as a community, the resourcefulness and ingenuity that built our city, and what's special about Moses Lake. These conversations will be crystallized into cohesive, clear, and positive messaging about the city's vision and how we're going to get there with the help of our residents and businesses. This community engagement effort will result not only in a clear shared vision, but also more empowered businesses and residents whose expertise, talents, and ideas are valued, put to work, and supported by the city. Town halls, hands-on workshops, a statistically valid citizen survey, and other ways to participate in person and online will all be part of this community engagement effort. We promise to infuse fun as we engage our citizens and get their creative juices flowing. We're very excited to get going and even more excited to see the results. The look, feel, and economic health of our downtown core, or what I like to call the bullseye, is also a component of Council Priority number 3 and will include working with the Downtown Moses Lake Association and the Chamber to spruce up the downtown, including new street furniture that matches the genre of the light posts, repaint the downtown light posts and repair or replace lenses, replace street trees, especially the ones that are dying or dead or been removed, and also add to the downtown artwork. We will also contract with a firm to create visions and renderings for new investment from the Civic Park and Civic Center campus on 4th Avenue to Alder Street. Conceptual designs for improving the usability and economic contribution of St. Cayuse Square will also be created in partnership with the community and neighboring businesses. In addition to the City Council's top priorities, our team of amazing city employees work hard to make our city a little better every day. I'm proud of the work they are doing around customer service and process improvements. By the end of this year, 2025, my coworkers will have created an inspiring new service vision for the organization that answers the fundamental question, why do we exist as an organization? Our team of city employees will also establish foundational and core values to support the service vision and guide them in their everyday actions. Lastly, the service vision and values will culminate in a set of outcomes that answers the question, what are we in the business of? All of this work on the service vision, values, and outcomes will wrap up by the end of this year. We will then incorporate all of it into our systems, processes, training, and culture. Once established and part of our culture, our service vision, values, and outcomes will guide and inform what we do on a daily basis and how we do it. With a nod to Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits, we will be empowered to be proactive and take initiative to solve problems and improve processes, which is habit 1. Begin with the end in mind, habit 2. And know what matters most and what must come first, habit 3. Our values will also remind and enable us to be creative in seeking win-win solutions, habit 4. And synergies that result in the whole being greater than the sum of the parts, habit 6. And last but not least, strive for that continuous improvement, habit 7. My coworkers have been embodying these attributes. They have been team players in recent organizational changes, and they have initiated process improvements that have improved the experience of our customers. There is still more to do. In fact, with a growth mindset and a commitment to continuous improvement, there will always be more to do. But that's the fun of the journey that we're on together, a journey that propels us in a continuous upward cycle of excellence and fulfillment. In conclusion, I'm thrilled to be able to present to you the 2026 annual budget. This budget provides substantial resources to do what we do best and to accomplish what our residents and businesses pay for: public safety, land use planning and permitting, transportation, parks, recreation, cultural services, utilities, and more. It's exciting to be part of an organization that provides such important services for the safety and well-being of our population. In addition, the City Council's top 7 priorities take the long view and set Moses Lake on an inspiring path towards solid economic growth, financial health, and a positive image of the city. Achieving these priorities will require a great deal of focus, commitment, patience, and hard work of not just city staff and the City Council, but the entire Moses Lake community. Knowing what I know about Moses Lake, I'm confident that we can get there. Moses Lake's future is indeed bright. Gratitude is due to my incredible team of coworkers who produced this budget. A special thanks goes to our finance director, Madeline Prentice, who worked long and late hours to manage the process and bring all the complex moving parts into a comprehensible, digestible budget. Department heads and division managers also did a great job in not just submitting their budgets, but also in taking a microscope to their budgets and estimating the revenues and expenditures with more precision. We are grateful to the City Council for their leadership, as well as for the direction and vision we needed to produce this budget. We also appreciate the City Council and the community providing the financial resources to accomplish all of the important work that is described in this budget. With the support of the City Council and the community, we can achieve what this budget sets out to do and thereby continue to propel Moses Lake on its path of prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Madeline?
Camera, can you bring the PowerPoint up? We're waiting on a PowerPoint here. Just a second.
Okay.
Could you tell that joke about the frogs?
One frog to the other frog.
No.
Times sure fun when you're having flies.
Come on.
All right. So I put together a brief PowerPoint tonight. I will try and keep it very brief that will walk you through the budget and what you're going to see as you read through the budget document. So you go to the next slide, please. So the guide to the budget, this guide to the budget basically will walk you through, there's 8 major sections of the budget. There's an introduction, a city profile, a budget guide, an executive summary, operating budgets, which is the general fund and the street fund, and the other funds budgets, which is your enterprise funds, all of the other special revenue funds, debt service, and then the capital improvement program, and then an appendix. Next page. So in the introduction, the Reader's Guide to the Budget, just a simple statement that we're required by state law to adopt a balanced budget each year. And the budget highlights information contained in the budget. And then, of course, the city manager's budget message that was just read by City Manager Carlincy. So that's in the introduction. Next page. The city profile contains information about the city of Moses Lake itself, has city organization charts for the elected officials, the city management team, the city organization chart, and then also it includes the council's 2026 city council priorities in the city profile section. Next page. The budget guide itself will walk you through the budget preparation and the budget calendar. The budget process, which includes 4 functions. It's a policy document, an operational guide, a communication device, a legally required financial planning tool, and then there's discussion on the basis of accounting and the fund types that the city complies with and is under. And then in addition, we'll have the 2026 preliminary property tax levy. The one thing I want to note on that is that we still have not received the 2026 preliminary assessed values from the county assessor's office. She has let us know that those will not be available until the end of October. So we are behind.
Which is the latest I've ever heard of.
Yeah. We've been putting pressure on to try and get those assessed values, but she has said they will not be available until end of October. And I don't know what we can do to compel her to provide those earlier to us.
Torches and pitchforks?
You lead the charge. Next page. The executive summary. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what the executive summary contains. So it's going to give you citywide revenues. And the one thing that I will note, or a few things I'll note, property tax. Preliminarily, we have included the 1% increase in the base levy rate, plus approximately 9.9% increase in new construction. Again, these are preliminary based on last year's numbers. I don't have a preliminary assessed value, so this is just using the numbers from last year that we received. And once we get those numbers from the county auditor, then I can update this. The sales tax and criminal justice sales tax is trending down for this year. So we have reduced the budget for 26 by 6%. And criminal justice sales tax also is trending down. So we've reduced that sales tax by 5% for 2026. Utility tax, we are seeing strong increases in electric, gas, and cellular telephone usage just because of the customer usage, the rates, and growth of the city. And of those tax bases. So we are seeing increases, strong increases in those 3 utility taxes. And of course, we're going to have smaller increases in our water, wastewater, garbage, and stormwater, again, based on the usage, the rates, and the customer growth. Development related revenues, building permits, plan review, land use, we're projecting decreases due to the slowing development activity that we're seeing. And then, of course, grants, we're expecting a 12.5% decrease. That's largely due to the SAFER grant that ends at the end of July next year. Next page. Citywide expenditures, some things to note there. Salary costs reflect the CPI, which we use the June over June CPI, and this year that's 2.7%. So the salary costs are including that CPI increase. The employer contribution rate for the employee retirement plan decreased in July of this year. So it went from over 9% down to 5%, 5.58. So it's a 3.53% decrease for the retirement, the employees portion of the contribution. So we saw some savings there. Workers' compensation, the L&I premium rate for police and fire, we're expecting, they notified us a 15% increase for 2026. This is the 4th consecutive year that we have seen double-digit increases in L&I rates for police and firefighter. It's a cumulative 3-year increase of 52% for police and fire and L&I premiums. So that's a chunk of money. Yeah, it's crazy. The budget assumes a 9%.
Do we belong to any rebate programs for that?
We go through the state for our L&I. Yeah. We are part of the retro program, so we do get some rebates, but the last couple of years they've been decreasing. Yeah. The budget assumes a 9% increase in medical premiums and a 6% increase in dental premiums. Those were initial increases and numbers, projected numbers that we received from our insurance provider. I just received notification late last week that the actual increases are going to be 8.7 for medical and 4.3 for dental. So a later budget, I will update those numbers so that we actually have the actual increases for medical and dental premiums. So we will see a little bit of a drop there in those. We also have included in the budget a $250,000 transfer to the rainy day fund from the general fund to continue to build the rainy day fund reserve balance. And then it will also have a citywide sources and uses of funds and cash, and then a personnel summary in the exec.
And so because of interfund transfers being what again, Madeline?
27.9.
So because of interfund transfers, there's a little bit of double counting, which inflates the expenditure side of the budget more than it really is. The city council's 15% reserve policy is about 6.5.
Yeah.
So you're about double what your reserve policy is for the general fund and street fund combined. that summary is in your budget, so. And in the future, we'll be hopefully avoiding those types of spikes because we'll be contributing a steady amount from every fund into the equipment and street or fleet replacement reserve fund and saving up so we don't have these one-time spikes in any particular budget.
Sorry. We have one, the one bond that's going to be paid off in 26. And then after that, we'll only have the local borrowing that we'll have for the debt service. And then transfers out, Again, the other thing that we did too is that we're proposing for the street fund, we're proposing that they use roughly 500,000 of the beginning fund balance that they have as well, which meant that we did not have to do a transfer from the general fund to the street fund in 2026. So that was a big help to the general fund this year.
It's only a one-time help.
Right. Right. Okay. Next fund. So other funds budgets, again, this breaks down the revenues by the other funds that we have. So the rainy day fund, you can see that we're 2025 was 500,000. We're proposing 250,000, but with the interest that it will earn, it's going to be roughly 287 is what we're projecting. Other operating funds is like the lodging tax, the grants and donations fund, the opioid fund, the transportation benefit fund is there. So all of those other special revenue type funds are included in that other operating funds. Enterprise funds is the utility funds, water, wastewater, sanitation. Internal service funds, those are the fleet, technology services, and the, who am I missing? Building maintenance. Risk management, that is our insurance, our liability insurance is the biggest piece of that. And then we also have our unemployment compensation fund in there as well, and the fireman's pension fund, and then debt service funds. So those increased slightly from 25, 49.4 million versus 49.34 in 25 for revenues. Expenditures. This again is the same fund, the various fund types. The one that really is the most noticeable in this one is the, oh no, sorry, it's not in here. The enterprise funds is the biggest increase of 33.6 or 86 versus 29.7. So we're at a total of 52.75 for 25, 56.3 for 26 proposed expenditures. Next page. And the capital improvement funds. This is the one where you're going to see that big increase. So for capital improvements, the revenues are projected to be 28 million. And the expenditures are 29.2 million for the capital improvement funds. And that's as a result of going through those CIPs and really sitting down with everyone and identifying the projects that we want to accomplish between 26 through 30, 31 for the next 5-6 years. So, so for 26, we're proposing a 29.2 million capital improvement budget. And then the appendix. We will have the unrepresented wage scale at a later upcoming budget workshop. I don't have that completely identified and laid out, so we'll get that to you in a later workshop and have that for you. And then the capital improvement programs, it's going to have the same information that you were presented at the all day long workshop that we held. It has all of those same worksheets, and then each of the projects will be listed there as well. And that's it. So.
You don't want to add anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Your Honor, if you guys kind of hold the budget in your hand, it's kind of heavy and it's a lot of pages. Maybe to help make it feel a little bit more digestible. Starting on page 144 is all of the CIPs that you already looked at a couple weeks ago. So hopefully that helps feel a little bit better that you've already taken a bite out of a bunch of this. So what you're seeing that's new is the first 144 pages. That's it, just only 144 pages. Anything after the first 144 pages you've already seen. Does that make you feel any better?
Yes.
You're gonna read it tonight? Is that what you said?
Okay, any further business? If not, the meeting's adjourned.